Today we have our newest Pittsburgh ASMP member, Don Orkoskey. Did I say that right?
Orkoskey, but that's
Orkoskey. Okay, said it like a Pittsburgher, I guess. So anyway, I could say all this, the act, but let's just get right to it. And Don, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into photography and what your business is.
Yeah, so about me, 42-year-old from about an hour away in Wheeling, West Virginia, born and raised there, and I've lived in Pittsburgh since '98 when I came up here to go to the Art Institute to learn photography. Went on to Point Park for a little while, left a few credits shy of a bachelor's in photojournalism there, bounced around a little bit, doing some assisting and second shooting for different people here and there, as well as some, portraits and things on my own, and working odd jobs until 2007, when I opened up WDO Photography, doing weddings and portraits and other events, and been doing that pretty much ever since, with some, as I think all of us probably do, a couple other odd things here and there as well. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So the first thing, one of the things you mentioned, that you are a teacher and you're into nature. So tell us a little bit more about that, and also I know you have some pictures to show too.
Yeah. So I think the first class that I taught was around the same time that I opened my business. In addition to the business in addition to WDO Photography, I also had a partner. We did arts education. We partnered with Children's Museum and the Warhol and a bunch of other organizations to do arts education, mostly animation, like South Park style paper and stop motion animation. So we were teaching a lot of classes there. But I did a nature class in, I think, the fall of 2007, just through like meetup.com or something like that. And then a few years after that, I had a florist who, I think it was probably 2 years before I taught. Again, there was a florist who had done, I think, 5 weddings in a row. We were both the vendors there. And she asked me to do maternity photos, and we did those. And she had the baby, and she said, I have a camera and I don't know how to take pictures of the baby, and I really would love a class. And I'm in these mom groups online, and would you teach a new parent class if I got enough students together? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds awesome. I like kids. I love teaching. Let's do it. So I did that a number of times in the early teens, and it was in 2019, Phipps, former longtime photographer, and I don't think I ever was given his name, but he retired from teaching at Phipps, and they asked me if I would step in and teach all their photography classes. So started doing that. Basically intro classes, some macro stuff. I've also done like one-off cell phone classes, cell phone photography because these are it's for the general public. So it's a good way to get people in the door and starting to work with any camera, right? So then when like I said, I'm primarily events and weddings in terms of business. When the pandemic struck, I said, okay, what am I going to do now? And Phipps transitioned to virtual. So I did the same with starting to teach some classes. That led to a situation where as the vaccine was coming out, I said, actually, I shouldn't say I said, my wife said, maybe you should separate the classes from your event work and portrait work. So, and create a new website for it. So I started thinking about what that would look like. my wife is from Russia, so she's here as a grad student, and I've played soccer for years and years, so I know a bunch of immigrants, and I started thinking about and seeing as well. It wasn't just like this idea didn't just come to me, but seeing things like Black women photographers and all these photographers in Africa, and Seven Agency, which is doing incredible webinars and stuff like that about things that are happening in the photography world all over. And watching these things, hearing these stories, I thought, I would really like, because I'm an activist, I would really like to not just teach myself, but I would like to have some sort of platform where other folks could teach as well, especially folks all around the world, because now that everyone's used to using Zoom, and even though some people are tired of it, it's an incredible tool for virtual teaching. And I thought, it would be incredible to help marginalized folks and displaced people to make sure that they could tell their stories, because I was seeing a lot of that start to happen. There's Finbar O'Reilly, who's an incredible photographer, worked in Congo for decades, and he received, I can't remember the foundation, it's a French foundation that gave him a grant to do work on Congo, and he was like, why am I going into Congo even though I've been there for 20 years and trying to tell these stories? There are photographers in Congo. So he teamed up with a bunch of Congolese photographers, and through the pandemic, they have been producing incredible work on Congo. So I said, I'd love to do something, not just a one-off type of thing like that, but to make sure that people have agency to tell their own stories, and also to tell the stories in their community, right? Because that's one thing that I see happening with like Black women photographers. They're advocating for stuff like that, and that's something that I, found really appealing. Like, instead of guys that just look like me going into places and not really getting what's happening sometimes, or even if we do get what's happening, there's maybe a more qualified photographer already there. So I founded Global Photography School, and I'm still working on getting other educators, photography educators, signed on that. I have one contract out right now with a woman in Atlanta, but I happen to reach out. I found these guys that are Rohingya, which they are majority Muslim. They're from Myanmar, but they have been displaced and living in Bangladesh, in the world's largest refugee camp. There's over 1 million people there right now. So I found these guys online and reached out and said, hey, I see you guys have, their organization is called Omar's Film School. They're doing photography and videography, and I can show some of their work. Jen and I talked about some of that. So, but these guys, I reached out to them and said, I'd like to help support you guys, like get you equipment if you need equipment.
What's burning?
It's the grill.
Oh.
If you guys need any help with learning, I can do some of that. Whatever, but and also to possibly get them to teach classes that folks around the world, and just help them to get I don't want to say recognition, but just for people to see what's happening. Because well, if you want, I'll go ahead and screen share, and we can
that would be nice.
Don't mind starting with their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, the Rohingya are, and it's primarily men that are in the Omar's Film School. There are some women as well, but I've not talked to them. This is actually a small piece. This shot here is a small piece of this overview of part of the camp. They in 2017, if anyone's heard about the attempted genocide in 2017 against the Rohingya, Myanmar, which is primarily Buddhist, and you probably have heard what's going on there now with the military coup that overthrew their president. The military has for decades actually tried to hunt down and abuse and kill and harm the Rohingya. They have long had this opinion that they're this like a horde of Muslim invaders. You know, the common thing that you know you hear about other people, right? The othering that happens. Of course, they've been in Myanmar for centuries, so they're mostly farmers. But in 2017, the Myanmar military basically convinced the Buddhist population through Facebook that they were this threat to Myanmar and to the Buddhist majority. And so everyday people started attacking them, and that's when their numbers swelled in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. That's when Bangladesh put up a huge chain link fence with razor wire. That's when they put up fences in between camps. So there's 1 million people in this area that are Rohingya, but they are in different camps. They can't easily get from one to the other. They cannot leave the camps because the Bangladesh military is there. They were not allowed to learn even elementary school until 2002. That's when the UN finally negotiated an agreement between Myanmar and Bangladesh in terms of curriculum. So they were then legally allowed to teach children up to 5th grade. In 2012, they finally got permission to teach 6th through 8th grade. Prior to that, before 2017, there were some folks who got fake documents and left and went throughout Bangladesh to continue their education. But most of these guys that are in Omar's film school, they were taught English by their teachers, and that was because the aid workers that are coming in are mostly speak English, so they could make money under the table. Because the other thing is, no Rohingya in the camps are allowed to make money, but they could essentially be paid under the table for working as fixers or guides for foreign journalists. So if a journalist comes in and says, I'm looking for, you know, a mother with children whose husband was killed by the military, you know, they know where to go. But in their experience with international journalists, one journalist, and they didn't tell me who this was, but one journalist who was coming there a lot said, you know, with this influx in 2017, I saw a huge amount of change. And he says, you know, he wasn't really familiar with how their culture in Myanmar. But he says, things are changing here and you're becoming Bangalized. And you guys have cell phones. You know, he encouraged them to take pictures. And he said, you guys should be documenting what's happening, because even though you're safe in the camps, quote unquote, safe in the camps, you're still under threat of cultural genocide, and your culture is changing, and it's getting eaten up by essentially the Bangladesh culture, and just changing because of the fact of being in a refugee camp. So that's what they started doing with Omar's film school. The pandemic hit, and then they also started making videos with you know, on COVID safety. The cooking all in the camps is all done with propane tanks. So they did like safety videos on propane. They did how to repair houses. They do how to wear your mask properly, all this stuff. So, and this stuff is shared through the UN or another NGOs, some NGOs, basically like a Dropbox that people can come and pick these files up throughout the camps. So they record these videos and store them there. It's not necessarily transferred out, you know, through it's not on YouTube essentially. But I contacted them in late March, and the day after I contacted them, they suffered a horrific fire that tore through the camps. 50 people were killed and 400 people were injured. Thousands of people were displaced. And again, these are people who already only had the clothes on their backs. Again, they cannot work. Some of them, even though they've been there for 30 years, all they have is what's given to them. So, so these guys have shared a lot of photos with me. I'm working with them now to sort of refine their style. And again, some of these guys are literally just using cell phones because that's all that they're technically it's not actually even legal for them to carry their cell phones or to have a cell phone. They cannot register a SIM card. So once a month, either they have SIM cards that are registered by people outside of the camp, folks in Malaysia or somewhere else will register a SIM card for them. After a month, if it's not registered, their SIM card stops working. So, but they're not allowed to take pictures. They, a guy from the UN who's British in 2019 helped them. He gave them 2 Nikon cameras and some lenses and a laptop. So they do have some better equipment. And I'm working with them on sort of refining their skills. But you can see these guys are, they're good photographers. If you search for Omar's Film School, you can see some of their videos. Their videos are well put together. Of course, this stuff is horrific that I'm showing here. This is the aftermath of the fire, displaced people walking through, and there wouldn't have been hardly room to move through this area where you see the people standing in the background here because of the houses, the shelters that were there prior to the fire. So it's another look at Mohammed Qasim's, another photo of his of the fire. One of the things that made the fire so bad is the fact that they used propane for cooking. So, they documented some of the, propane tanks there. Again, people just going through the wreckage, looking for water pitchers or anything that they could salvage. And then there's a few large fields where kids play or where the NGOs distribute things. And a lot of folks ended up basically spending the night with the few earthly possessions that they had, in these large areas, waiting for replacement shelters and things. So a few days after the fire, they found a few Bangladeshi men had broken into the camp, which folks from outside can come in fairly easily. Like journalists, international journalists obviously need visas and things like that, and there are military checkpoints there. But a lot of the local Bangladeshis that work there, work inside the camps and come and go. And they found, so it's a little loose in terms of who local can come and go. They found 3 gentlemen who were starting fires. So this is some photos of some matches that are taped and rubber banded together that were that someone had attempted to start an additional fire in the camp only a few days later. So some more shots of folks, just sitting in devastation, with a couple things that they own. The other thing is Bangladesh does get a monsoon season. It's in Southeast Asia, so the camp is on these very steep hillsides. And that first picture doesn't really look like it because it's literally completely covered with shelters. But this photo here by Mohammed Zaid shows what the flooding looks like that happens regularly. So a lot of the shelters are built up on sandbags essentially, but still, like you see this gentleman here is using like a corrugated roof to try to keep his shelter from being completely inundated. Again, the propane tank that the families have to use to cook. There's a shortage of wells as well, so there's groups there that are trying to raise money to dig more wells, but people have to walk to fill their water for washing and cooking and things. And just some other photos of general stuff in here. they can't have jobs again, but there is a sort of black market, and there are, again, if you're a foreigner and you go there and you buy something, they might look the other way depending on what you're buying. So you might be able to buy a basket on your way out the door, but or again, if you're a journalist, you can slip somebody $50 or $100 under the table to do some translating for you, but there's no formal market. So there's, again, not a lot in the way of bathrooms and other utilities. So a lot of kids being bathed out in the street there. So you can see the poor condition that the tarps and things here are in, that the kids are able to just kind of play and peek out of them. So but as everywhere, right, kids are kids and life goes on. So there's a shot of a couple siblings just smiling and having a good time. So and then this, I thought this was a beautiful photo I wanted to share from Mohammed Zaid, who is my primary contact essentially. So yeah, so that's sort of the story with the Rohingya themselves. Now, since the fire happened a while ago, I tried to raise some money and send it to them. I ended up donating just a little bit myself because I wasn't having much luck raising anything. But these guys are trying now, because most of them don't want to necessarily be photographers. They're not looking to be, the photojournalists or even documentary filmmakers. They're doing this stuff because other than teaching, they have very little other things that they can actually do to keep busy in the camp. So, but because they are trying to document their culture and keep it from, or at least keep a record of it before it disappears. I approached them about putting together an exhibition and trying to get that work shown. We're still talking about what that'll look like. We're still talking about techniques and haven't really put together the gallery proposal yet to approach galleries. But that's the plan. And hopefully, I would love to do a book with them as well. So that this, again, they can't individually, they can't have, they're not allowed to be paid, but the organization does have, there's like a church that is, that has a way to get them the funds, and this gentleman from the UN who helped them in 2019, I've talked to him, this British gentleman who is able to help, essentially help them to store those funds and then disperse them for things that they need, which their big goal right now, other than documenting everything, is to create a school. They have about 600 students that are 6th to 8th grade, essentially, that they want to do virtual education with, because it will probably be a very long time before these million people are able to be vaccinated with the state of vaccination in the world. So, and right now there hasn't been, the past year, there has been no school. So again, there's, despite the fact that they're allowed to have school, they cannot actually do classes. So that's my big exciting project that that's really driving me. If you want, I can show some of my nature stuff, and we can talk about.
Well, I guess does anybody have questions about maybe the Rohingya or anything you guys want to ask them at this point? My question is, and maybe you touched on this and I missed it. Have you personally been there to visit?
No, I've not. I've not gone to Bangladesh. I would like to, but I mean, it's emotionally taxing just hearing their stories. Being because again, I said to my wife, I said, the Taliban says girls aren't allowed to be educated, right? And you're like, that's evil, right? Like, that's not right, right? But here in this refugee camp, it took them decades for the UN and these two countries to agree on allowing first through fifth graders to formally learn, what curriculum to use. And there was informal schooling before that, but again, if you're hoping to leave there, maybe come to the US or go to the EU or somewhere, you have no formal record of being educated first through fifth grade. So you have to do some sort of, catch up or make up work. And I'm like, again, the Taliban, that's pretty evil. Girls aren't allowed to go to school. But this is just a bureaucratic barrier. Like, why? Like, how is this that hard to fix, right? Yeah, I would really love to go and meet these guys in person. But like I said, it's hard even when the fire happened. I said, how can I help? What can I do? I said, I'll raise money if I can. I'll do whatever you need. And after really switching gears to be sort of to do rescue, essentially, Mohammed Zaid messaged me on WhatsApp one day, and he said, "Prove." Their English is very good, but you can tell that it's not their first language. I don't even think it's their second language. But he said, "Prove to me that you're not weak. Send a fire truck." So, and I mean, I can't get mad at him, right? He's understandably frustrated. He spent, he's been there since 2017. He spent years. He's not, and he's a young man. He was in 10th grade and had to move around Myanmar before fleeing to Bangladesh. So has an informal high school education, doing 11th and 12th grade, but like, he just was pulling people out of rubble, and he sees the UN, and these other NGOs there not doing much. And I can understand being incredibly frustrated. Like, why is there no action, right? So, so I'm not mad at him at all for saying that, but it's it's emotionally taxing, being on the other side of the globe, and trying to do whatever I can to help. So.
Oh, and have any of these refugees been placed in other countries? Has the U.S. taken some or not in the U.S.?
Handfuls, small handfuls. There's one gentleman who desperately wants to be a doctor, and right after the fire, he's telling me, he says, I'll go anywhere. I just want to be a doctor. And I know a cardiologist from Children's, and I was like, how do we fix this? Like, how do we bring this guy to Pittsburgh? Like, he doesn't have a high school education, right? Because he doesn't have a middle school education because he's not allowed. So he was like, I don't know. Like, he would have to get those things. He would have to do his pre-med, and he would have to be accepted into a medical school, and that's assuming he was able to, somebody sponsored him as a asylum seeker, and he was able to come to the United States. So all of those, there's so many steps that these folks would have to take. But I know that Ireland has accepted in a number of Rohingya refugees. I think, given the political climate in the U.S., after the last 4 years with the Muslim ban and everything, and these guys, like, one of the videos that they've done is warning about child marriage. Like, they're progressive, right? Like, they're liberal-minded folks, and so this idea of, like, these what the Myanmar military, painting them as some horrible, these Muslim overlords running amok in their country, like, in that same sort of ridiculous idea that people in the United States, some people subscribe to, right? It's crazy. They talking to these guys, for the most part, the big desire for them is to go back home. They want to go back to Myanmar. They can't. They know they can't. The Myanmar military is now killing their own people for protesting. So they know they can. But one of the things that's happened with the recent uprising and coup, the military coup, is that that there are Burmese folks who are posting apologies on social media saying, we're so sorry, we didn't understand, that we didn't believe we didn't know you, right? And we didn't trust you. And now that we see our own military turning on us, we're sorry. And it stinks that it took that to happen, right? But them getting some support from their fellow countrymen is at least one good thing that's come out of the recent fighting in Myanmar. So maybe there'll be some sort of resolution. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but hopefully they'll one day get to go home, because Bangladesh also, the thing is, they're refugees, which means they're stateless. They have no country. Bangladesh will not recognize them. They will not give them citizenship. They can seek asylum in another country, but it's a huge process. Just applying for that takes thousands of dollars. So it's and again, there's not much activity from the UN or the NGOs. So yeah.
Anyone have any questions for him real quick about? And then if not,
On this really fun subject.
Everyone down. Okay, so let's look at some birds. Let's go back.
Yeah, some
No, but
birds.
thanks for sharing that. I've gotten to know a lot of refugees too from Bhutan, and the reality of sitting decades in the refugee camp and being homeless and all that goes with that. Yeah, I've known many families who have gone through that. So that's nice that you know what you're doing to these ones who you haven't even met in person. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's nice. And through photography, very, very cool. So
I think so. And again, this is something that it helps get me out of bed in the morning, right? It's good motivation. Like when you're like, I could use a couple more hours of sleep, then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Those guys, like when I do a Zoom call with them, it's just roosters 24/7 in the background, right? So, and they're literally right next to them. And most of these guys are in their, either very late teens, 19, 20 years old, to their mid 30s. And so they have kids, and their kids all have, just like kids here in the US, all have real noisy toys. So you hear I hear Paw Patrol toys in the background, right? Because they're getting these toys from America and elsewhere that are being sent to them. So and I think like they don't have air conditioning, they don't have toilets, right, in their homes, right? Like I think I can deal with it, right? So but yeah, let's maybe switch gears. We'll look at some
and you told me you do walks at the Frick too, right?
Yeah, every Saturday, and I might switch it up and do Raccoon Creek or different places. Somebody asked me to do Allegheny Cemetery, and then I used to live near there, so I know there's a lot of cool wildlife there. I mean, that's an amazing thing about all the parks we have in Pittsburgh, right? Is we're surrounded by wildlife. So, and actually, my wife and I went to Niagara back in August, to Niagara Falls. And we were walking around on Goat Island, which is like the big landmass in between the Horseshoe Falls and the American Falls. And we saw, I think, 8 skunks the one night and a fox. So, and this is a place that sees, you know, millions of visitors every year. And there were just skunks running around like they run the place, which was pretty cool. A little scary, but because you don't want to get sprayed. Yeah, so wildlife is all around us. And so Saturday mornings, I decided with the virtual stuff, I love doing virtual teaching. I love being able to reach people wherever they are. But I wanted to do something. I wanted to get out and walk a little bit, socialize in person a little bit. So I decided in March to start doing some nature photography walks and just basically invite anybody to come along. So all ages, cell phones, whatever people have, right? So now a lot of the folks who do come out are birders. So they have, you know, 400mm lenses or 300s with a 2x teleconverter on them, you know, and they know a million times more than me about what what the bird is that we're looking at, or what that call is that they hear. I love nature, but most of the time I need to get back home and do Google image search to see what it is that I managed to capture. So, but I have actually learned quite a bit from a lot of the folks that have joined me. So. This first shot, this is an elk up in Elk County, PA. If you've never been there, it's absolutely gorgeous. There's a huge herd of elk there. My wife and I went back in the fall, just for the day. I got up in the morning and took off and drove out. And this elk was laying. You can see the fence behind him. He was laying in this farmer's field. And there's a field that's beyond the brush there that there were some, so the male elk are bulls and the females are moose. So there were some moose in the field behind there, as well as on, in front of him. He was essentially watching. I think they call them harem because, that's, of course, we still use terms like that in nature, I guess. So, he was 50 feet from the road, and we took a huge long hike. This place that they say you're guaranteed to see elk. Didn't see any, and we got in the car and we're driving back towards the welcome center, and the side of the road is just clogged with cars. And we look over, and this guy's sitting there, and everybody's right outside their cars with their cell phones and things, taking pictures. So pulled out the monopod and walked in front of a couple people and sat down and snapped away and got a few pictures of the females as well. But this guy was really the star of the show. He stood there he laid there for at least 45 minutes, if not an hour, when we were there. And then he got up and walked off with the herd and followed them. So, but it's an amazing experience, and I encourage folks to go, because it's I think it's about a 2-hour drive. It's up a little bit east, but up above 80. And just gorgeous. Whether you see elk or not, the landscape is just incredible there as well. So very tall cliffs and things. So it's beautiful. This is just a whitetail whitetail deer from Frick down in the down near 9 Mile Run. So it's incredible. That's another thing that, again, I encourage people to come out to these nature walks, because people are like, well, I just have a cell phone. I'm like, you can get there's deer that you can get within 20 feet of, and a cell phone you can get a good shot, especially we go not too early, 9:30 in the morning, but just showing people where they can go in Frick to see these things, and then they can come back and when the lighting is a little better. I encourage people to do that, like come earlier if you want, or come in the evening. give them a couple hints about where different things are, owls and things. But the deer and frick, if you're not familiar, roam all over the park, and you can normally, if you spend 2 hours walking through Frick Park, you're going to see at least 3 deer, normally together, just munching on.
I did in my first 10 minutes on my walk there this past week. Yeah, 3 deer.
Yeah,
No joke.
yeah, exactly. They're hard to miss. So yeah, but again, there's a lot of birds. Last Saturday was national, or not national, it was International Migratory World Migratory Bird Day. So we are seeing a bunch of a huge influx. There were orioles, which everyone loves. All the birders love to take pictures of orioles. This is, I think this is a titmouse. If there's any birders here, please don't be mad at me if I'm wrong. But with a little seed. So the other great thing about Frick is near the environmental center, they have a few feeders and a bunch of trees, small shrubby trees. So you can stand right near those shrubby trees, and the birds will go to the feeder, grab something to eat, and fly to a tree. And that's not cheating. So and again, just even really common birds like this robin here. I show people, like, you can make a gorgeous photo. This is a Nikon 70 to 200 2.8. Literally, I don't know how many feet away, because robins in the city, they'll land on your head if you stand still for long enough. So they'll get really close to you. But there was a woman with just a little point and shoot who was out that day with me, and she got, I think, 3 or 4 like gorgeous photos of this nice backlit robin here. Again, I showed her how to find exposure compensation, so she overexposed a little bit to get the robin in, and then this was my shot, one of my shots of it. So there's a woodpecker, if you're familiar with the park, who has a hole up in a tree about maybe 200 yards into Falls Ravine, from the bottom of Falls Ravine. And I heard it like it was on top of me, and I started looking all around and couldn't see it. No one that was there could see it. Like, where is it? And we could hear it. Not just knocking into, not just being pecking into the wood, but also calling. So eventually I walked part of the way around a tree and looked up, and he was cleaning out this hole from last year. So there's you can see all the debris that he's tossing out. He's in there pecking away and then tossing it out. So he's getting ready to nest. There's a few owls that frequent the park and that nest in the park that are absolutely gorgeous. I've yet to get a shot of one, but I know exactly where the screech owl mating pair are, and I check it all the time. So every week when I go there. So, but being that we do our walks in the morning, I do go to Frick more often than that, but since we do the walks on Saturday morning, the owls they're sleeping for the day. So just a blue jay, which again are pretty common birds, but this was from World Migratory Bird Day, and they were tagging folks from the powder mill, which is part of the Carnegie, were tagging birds. And so it's a little bit of an invasive thing for the birds, right? It's like going to the doctor's office, although unexpectedly going to the doctor's office, because the birds don't know that this is going to happen to them. So this one was tagged and was then released, and was, I think, grumpily sitting on in this bit of shrub there, relaxing. So I couldn't quite get around to the front of him, but I was able to get around enough that his eye is just peeking out around that branch there. So And then a photo of them actually doing the tagging, doing some tagging. So this scientist from Powder Mill Nature Reserve holding up this is not the same blue jay. This is another blue jay that they had caught. So, which is absolutely gorgeous. They're so loud. Like I was not a big fan of blue jays, to be honest. They're very loud. You think like, oh, did I just hear a hawk? And if you don't know, right, you think, oh, maybe that was a hawk. No, it's a blue jay. So they're very loud and they're large. They're a little larger than most other. They're definitely larger than songbirds. So they're they can be kind of bullies. So but yeah, so this is a bit of fun. Even getting a much closer than normal. So that's the nature stuff.
So Dave had a question for you.
Oh, sure.
I'm putting you on the spot, Dave.
Well, I mean, I thought you were the host, so I thought you should do it.
No. I want to hear from other people too.
Dawn, I was just wondering, where do you start these meets on Saturdays?
Yeah, so 9:30 every Saturday at the fountain by the Environmental Center. So, and we've had folks drive in from Greensburg and from, I can't remember where up north, up near Cranberry, that have come in. I was starting them down in the run because I initially figured it was, well, one, there's a beaver that lives down there and I really want to find the beaver. But he's hard to find. So I was starting them down in like 9 Mile Run. And then one of the birders was like, well, the migratory birds all hang out at the top of the hill. And it helps that this guy, it helps him that he lives near the top of the hill so he can walk. But he would rather walk to the Environmental Center than walk down. So he convinced me to change it. And then realizing, well, the fountain's right there. The parking's a little tougher, I think, where the Environmental Center is. There's not as many spaces. But people seem to be able to find it a lot easier. So yeah, right at the fountain. I am punctual. A lot of times I've learned to post, we're walking this way away from the fountain. I'm pretty punctual. So 5 minutes after 9:35, 9:40, I'm normally taking the group out, and it's a Saturday. So inevitably somebody's hitting me up on Messenger, Facebook Messenger saying, wait, where are you? So.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Hopefully you can come on out.
My knees will put up with it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing about Frick, right? There's like where we start out, we normally walk, and again, I want to change these up somewhat, but we walk through the meadow, which is soft underfoot, and it's pretty flat. There's a slight uphill at the beginning. We loop around a little bit. Then sometimes we do go down some of the trails, down over the hill a little bit. But I've had people say, "I'm going to go this way. I'm going to do this," and I have my phone right up on my shoulder essentially. So people will buzz me and say, "Hey, I can't figure out how to do this. Can you tell me how to do this on my camera?" And I'll give them remote instruction if they went off on their own way. But a lot of times people, if they've got bad knees or something like that, they'll do the meadow and then go down by the Environmental Center where the bird feeders are. Again, like I said, I don't think it's cheating. So they'll get shots down there because there's all these smaller trees and just a plethora of birds there.
Awesome. Well, Dawn, I want to say thank you for sharing this presentation and about your work with the Global and the Rohingya and all of that. And we are very happy to have you as a member of our Pittsburgh chapter, and hope you find a lot of good resources here too. And so thanks. And with that, Archie, you can stop the video and then we can talk about anything.